Hey, people, I'm going to read some in Isaiah today about the Merkabah, but I want to go look around in the garden first. This is golden pepper growing in here with this tomato, and I've been putting this skylight on here and covering this tomato some because they haven't been pollinating. It's been too hot. You see one tomato on there now, but when it gets too hot, the pollen gets too sticky and it doesn't pollinate well. I haven't seen a lot of honeybees this year, but I planted these sunflowers and they draw those pollinators in. You see them butterflies come in to pollinate. But these sunflowers, you can see that Fibonacci curve inside there, and they're real good for drawing the pollinators in because they'll go around in a circle. It'll go around the circle, opening petals, and then it'll go around a circle one at a time and open each little flower. There's many little flowers. Each sunflower seed will be connected to a flower. And so it'll go around in a circle and work its way in. And so every time they come by, it'll have another flower open. So you can come visit it many times a day. Watermelons, they love in this heat. The big one growing up on the fence, it pruned itself. So it's in the refrigerator now. And this corn, this old Indian corn, I know when these stalks are red, I know that the ears are red too. You can get it early and it's yellow and you can eat that, but I just grow that for the crows and the squirrels. And this castor, it's looking happy, it's loving its sun. You see a whole bunch of seeds coming out. They'll all look like a dog tick. And this burnout planter I made, it's looking pretty. You see the cantaloupe and the watermelon growing on out of it good. It's got a big cantaloupe growing inside of it. And it's got these peppers growing in there. The bugs like them a whole lot. I put some diatomaceous earth on it. It'll come in after, and it's got some big radishes growing up in there. Them radishes are liking that soil too. So that worked out pretty good. And this hanging watermelon, he's still hanging there looking pretty good. He still wants to stay round though. And this radish I put off in his pot with this drain pan in there, he's doing the best. He's liking the clover that he's growing with. A couple of healthy radishes growing in there. But these are brandywine tomatoes. I can take the seeds out and grow the same thing next year. And this old refrigerator drawer, and this is what I use to start them in. I drilled some holes underneath on the four corners. And I'll start the seeds in here in February, and I put a tinted glass over it until they come up good. And then I'll transplant them from there. But I left this one in here, and he's doing tomatoes better than the others because he stays cooler. At night, these bricks give some airflow, and it cools that soil down better. Plus, during the day, I'll throw a couple ice cubes in there. But they're a real tough tomato. I break limbs off when I'm transplanting them. So I'll just stab them in some soil and put them in the shade for 2-3 weeks before I put them out in full sun and they take off again. And these blueberry cuttings that I had in here, they were doing so much better than the lemon. I thought I'd make another terrarium for the lemon. But you see, they still got all their leaves, so I know they're taking root. It's been 2 weeks. Those are all looking good. You see some black happening. That happens. They might lose all their leaves. As long as the whole stem doesn't turn black, it's probably taking roots. And so I did another one for my lemons, and they seem to be doing better in there. And these wild grapes here are doing real good. They're filling up. And it'll probably be around August before they're ready. And this pepper I put out here, he still doesn't like the sunniest days, so I'll cover it when the sun comes out too much. And the bug's been trying to wreak havoc on my cabbage, the ones the goats didn't get, but it looks like I'll be eating some cabbage here shortly. This is diatomaceous earth that I put on there. It's not really a poison, it's just a bunch of crustaceans. This is what that corn looks like. It's just a pretty ornamental corn. You can get it early when it's yellow and it's tender and sweet. You can eat that. You come in whichever colors. All the seed I planted looked more like this. And then you can grind this up, make cornmeal out of it. But I don't eat this. I grow that for the squirrels and the birds. When I was a kid, we'd grow the bigger Indian corn, and around October, we'd skin them back like this and tie them together with a piece of tie wire and sell them on the side of the highway for $5 for 3 years of corn. People would make wreaths, hang it on the door for October. And so, for y'all that don't know, $5 when I was a kid is like $20 today. That's when yellow corn was going for 10 cents an ear. And this is one of them castors growing in partial shade, in the morning shade. You can see he's wanting some more light. He's trying to grow his hands big as he can, trying to get some more light. So these are my less lights, my skylights, when I want something to have less light. And that's my more light. You don't see it, but there's a rope that runs up in that tree, and I have a chainsaw blade attached to it. What I do is I cast my fishing pole up there where I want it, and I'll tie this spool of line to it and reel that up over and drag it over the other side. Then I'll tie it to my chainsaw on this line, and I'll use that to trim them high limbs, get some light down here on this blueberry. I just took a real old chainsaw blade, little bitty teeth. It didn't have many sharpenings left in it. It was about done. And I just cut it in half, and I put this stainless steel welding rod through this eye on each end and tie that off. And I'll bend these tabs out to make it want to put the chain side down when you pull it up. And so that chain will cut, otherwise the backside won't cut. So that walk in the garden lasted a little longer than I meant. But I told you I was going to talk about this Merkaba in here, the chariots. And so I'll start reading that one on the next movie. But this chariot, you can tell it's talking about money here. And starting at line 7, and is full of their land of silver and gold. There is no end to their treasures. And is full of their land of horses, and there is no end to the chariots. And full of their land idols, the work of their own hands. They worship that which have made their own fingers. And so it's talking about money. This is what everybody worships. This was the first god, was money. Money talks. And you see all these ancient coins, it was all about horses and chariots. It's the ancient spell they put on your money today. In God we trust. When a woman trusts, it's to support. In God we support. And so God was wanting his 10% every week. And they didn't want to turn the church into a farm. Don't bring me 10% of your sheep and 10% of your corn. Just bring me 10% of your gold. The church had to make a monetary system so you could support God. The tax collector, he didn't want to walk a herd around. He wanted gold. I watched a video the other day from the British Museum, and she was talking about how to read the Iron Age coins. And you see the majority of them had horses and chariots on them. Sometimes the horse had a man's head on it. It was hideous. And the way they would stamp these coins, they just had a stamp and they put it on the metal and hammered it in. And sometimes it missed. Sometimes you didn't have a front. Sometimes you didn't have a back. You could see the front of this coin's cut off and a little extra on the back. And so sometime the horse had no end, and sometime the chariot had no end. And is full of their lands, silver and gold, and there is no end to their treasures. And is full of their land, the horses, and there is no end to their chariots. And is full of their land, idols, the work of their own hands. And the work of your own hands, is most hideous. Oh, it's most hideous, Father. Working with his hands, most hideous. And they worship that which they have made with their own fingers. With their own fingers is at ATS, that's bought. B-O-T-I-V. That's bought of. When you're at the auction, you raise your fingers up to bid on something, and that's what you bought, the bought of. When you have made it with your own fingers, that means you bought it. And you're talking about worshiping gold. But this word, and is full, that's what I wanted to look at mostly. It comes up here 3 times. And it's where your word tamale come from. Tamale. And is full. And what they're getting, they're reading this as a double T. The dot inside the T reads as another T. And they're reading the dot underneath as an I. And then they're reading the dot in the M as another M. And they're reading the line underneath as an A. And then they're reading the L, and then the double dots underneath it as an E is where they're getting this tamale from. But I don't read it like that. You'll see that this word always follows a word that ends with a vav, and so it's an I. If this reads as an I. Again here, the last word follows it vav. And again here, the last word, is the vav. So I'm reading this as an I. And so I'm reading this as it, and then the M, the L followed by the A reads as a N, M-N. And then the double A, the first one reads as a Y. And so it reads as it Minyard. And the X, is a TS or a DS, same thing. And it Minyard such spews in. Spews in, that's where they're getting the full. And a minyard is dainty or delicate, a Yancey boy. And it minyards such spews in. And this looks like a vein, but the vowel followed by the A reads as a D or a T. And it's dine, that's German for thine or yours. And it minyards such spews in, thine fix, your fix, and then the EL followed by the A reads the end, and thine fixin' at sort of. And you see in the Greek, this word for treasures and treasuries is thesaurus. That's where if you're a poet, you go look for a word to rhyme that has the same meaning. That's their treasures, because these are poets talking. And what minyards such spews in, thine fix in, to fix your rhyme, go to the thesaurus. Thine fixin' at sort of. It minyards sousses, the S-U-S. And I ain't too sure about a souse being a horse. Souse is a pig, and them minyards, the sousses, thine fix. And then the L, not followed by the A this time, reading as a L. L, his, masculine, his immersed into. And so this is where the money comes from. This is the mercenary and Zeus. And they only fight for money. They ain't doing it for God. They're not doing it for country. They're doing it for money. It's the same place where the word merchant comes from. Originates from the Latin word mercenarius, meaning a hired worker, one who serves the wages. Derives from mercies, signifies pay, reward. This is a merchant, INT. The BT reads as a INT, a merchant, el merchant of. And it Minyard a souse wasum, a pig wasum, thine fix in the merchant of. And it Minyards, and then the vav followed by the aleph again, a D, a T or a D, a tally limb, to count up that limb, that branch of the family. And it Minyard tally limb, two most hitty. Why, the vav and the yod, vi meaning how stew, and then the double vav, reading as a I, the L followed by the A, reading as a N. How stewing as rose, what's bought of, stewing, what you're cooking up. The stewing as rose, what's raised. The cooking it up, what's bought of. And I said I was going to read this from the beginning earlier, but I found a poem down lower that really makes it easy to see the walk and talk. What Minyard spews in thine fixin' at share to. It Minyard souse wasum thine fix el merchant of. What Minyards tally limb to most hitty, why stew when as rose what's bought of. So I'm going to skip on down in the next movie, and I'm going to read down here at this walk and talk. And it's playing with this word upon everything, as a O-L-K. And so here it starts with a talk. He's talking, and then the same as the Minyards, it keeps repeating itself. And then it's the walk. And he's talking about the walk, and the walk, and the walk, and the walk, and the walk. And I like to find these repeating themselves because it helps to define these other words. And then you see where this is the tower. And so now it's the walk, and then the L, and read this backwards. And so the second L reading as a I-D-G, the walk ledge. And upon every tower, you got a soldier up there walking the ledge. But I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.